Hello there, very good evening and welcome to the News at 6 where we get you the day's top developing stories. Let's start with the headlines. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses the plenary session of the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, meets chairman of the Eurasian Economic Commission, Tigran Sargsyan. India successfully tests indigenously developed nuclear-capable Prithvi-2 missile. The surface-to-surface missile has a strike range of 350 kilometers. Niti Aayog predicts economy could grow by 7.5% in the current fiscal year. Vice Chairman Arvind Panagarian estimates GDP should reach 8% by the end of March 2018. And a day after the US pulls out of the Paris climate deal, widespread international condemnation, including in India, for President Trump. UN Chief Antonio Guterres calls it a major disappointment, while the European Union calls it a sad day for the world. Our top story, Prime Minister Narendra Modi today addressed the International Economic Forum in St. Petersburg. The forum is a good opportunity for India to showcase its improvements in the economy before world leaders and economists. Prime Minister Modi was the guest of honor at the plenary session of the forum. In his inaugural speech, Russian President Vladimir Putin called upon nations to work towards economic and social progress rather than in strategic confrontation. Prime Minister Modi emphasized that India is poised to take a giant step with its upcoming GST regime. He also underscored the developments in the digital front that are allowing India to transform at a rapid pace.
भारत में पूर्ण बहुमत वाली एक मजबूत और स्थिर सरकार चुनकर के आई है और उसके कारण जीवन के हर क्षेत्र में प्रगतिशील विचार के साथ निर्णय करने की दिशा में हम तेज गति से आगे बढ़ रहे हैं और आज भारत ट्रांसफॉर्मेशन की दृष्टि से तेज गति से सफलतापूर्वक आगे बढ़ रहा है। भारत एक इतना बड़ा विशाल देश है, 100 से ज़्यादा भाषाएं हैं, 1700 से ज़्यादा डायलेक्ट्स हैं। विविधता ये हमारी विशेषता है, विविधता हमारी शक्ति है। पिछले कई वर्षों में इन विविधताओं के साथ फेडरल स्ट्रक्चर के कारण अनेक विविध कानून, खास करके टैक्सेशन में, एक राज्य में एक कानून, दूसरे राज्य में दूसरा कानून, तीसरे राज्य में तीसरा कानून, और अगर किसी कंपनी को 3-4 राज्यों के साथ एक साथ काम करना हो तो अनेक कानूनों से निपटना पड़ता था। मैं आज खुशी के साथ कह सकता हूं कि बड़े लंबे अंतराल से हमारे यहाँ जीएसटी, गुड्स एंड सर्विस टैक्स के कानून की में सुधार लाने की दिशा में मशक्कत चल रही थी। हमने उसको कानूनी तौर पर प्रक्रिया पूर्ण कर ली है और 1 जुलाई आने वाले महीने में भारत में जीएसटी लागू हो जाएगा और उसके कारण देश के सभी राज्यों में, पूरे देश के हर कोने में एक ही प्रकार की टैक्सेशन सिस्टम होगी, जो मैं समझता हूं किसी भी निवेशक के लिए और विशेष करके विदेश के निवेशक के लिए बहुत ही उपकारक होती है।
Well, for more on this story, we are now joined by our senior reporter Akhilesh Suman, joining us in fact from the newsroom. Akhilesh, good evening. Talking about really what went on just a few minutes back as far as that speech was concerned by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Give us a sense of how crucial it was for him to speak at that forum, considering the fact that, of course, apart from bilateral and strategic ties, trade too, the economy too, is one key focus of the government.
Good evening, Tracy. It was very heartening to see that Prime Minister chose to go to various places today also, that includes even a Buddhist temple in St. Petersburg. So Prime Minister, when he is abroad, always try to find some sort of things that are connected with India. So Prime Minister did this job, and he also made the chairman of the European Economic Zone that is advocating consistently that India and Eurasian Economic Zone should align together for a free trade agreement, and this will give a boost to the Indian economy because Eurasian Economic Zone will attract massive Indian exports. So that is the fact. But again, when Prime Minister was addressing the conglomeration of the Economic Forum hosted by Russian Federation, and President Putin was also there, he emphasized the fact that there was a difference in the governance 3 years ago, and there is a difference in the governance now. So Prime Minister chooses always to showcase what is the difference in the 3 years, and he is told that there are so many obsolete laws and rules in the country that was discouraging for the investors, and now all those laws and the rules have been dissociated from the Indian taxation system. And he also emphasized the fact that GST is now in implementation, and the FDI can find easy to be take its route in India. So, you know, the Prime Minister always tried to showcase that what is the strength of Indian economy, and he also tried to see that India has some problem because of the diverse population and the federal structure. The critics might tell that, yes, why Prime Minister indulged into issues like this? But since, you know, that there is a skepticism all over the world that whether India is a stable society and governance or not, and that is why I think that Prime Minister chooses on every world forum to say that India is a stable government and India is socially stable, and also that economic transformation has taken place and reforms has taken place so that FDI can easily flow into the country. Tracy.
Absolutely, absolutely. When it comes to Prime Minister Modi and all the statements that he is making, all the moves that he's making there in Russia, and as far as, you know, the trade agreements as well that are being signed, we're tracking all of that. But what's on the other side, Akhilesh? What is the kind of response do you feel is coming in from the Russian side? We do know that ties with China is something that the world is watching, of course, very closely. And, you know, as far as emerging markets are concerned, India, of course, a crucial player there. You know, so how is Russia reacting to India, of course, with these overtures?
Yeah, it's very interesting, Tracy. You could know Russia is in the center of China and India. You know that India has been traditional partner of Russia since our independence, and China has become partner of Russia very recently. It's not a very old story. So it's a new story, but what is Russian interest in China? You know, Russians want investment from Chinese. That is the major interest of Russians in China, and Russians are very particular about this, that we have to get investment from Chinese, so that's there. But you know that India is the biggest market for Russians as the arms are concerned, as far as the high technology is concerned, nuclear reactors are concerned, and every type of defense procurements are concerned. So Russia, in this visit, Russia has been very happy because signing of Kudam 5 and 6, and you know that this has become a very softening between India and Russia, because some tensions was there in India because of Russia-China association, and China always insisting that NSG is not a free run for India. So yes, India was very annoyed that why Russia is so closely associated with China in this way. But Russia has made it very clear that, see, Indian interest is paramount, and it is not Russia that is doing anything, but Russia may persuade in whatever possible way. Russia will try to persuade China, but you know the results may not come very easily because every country has its own strategic goals and interests. So that's China is not going may not be going to
there are various levels that are involved, and of course India can just hope that Russia does put in a good word and that pressure really on China to perhaps change its mind. We'll leave it there for the moment. Akhilesh, Suman, thanks so much for joining us for those details. They will continue tracking, of course, the Prime Minister Europe tour with Akhilesh. Meanwhile, in other news, India on Friday successfully test-fired its indigenously developed nuclear-capable Prithvi 2 missile from the integrated test range at Chandipur in Odisha. The test was part of a regular training exercise conducted by the Indian Army. The surface-to-surface missile was fired from a mobile launcher from Launch Complex 3 of the ITR. Prithvi 2 missile has a strike range of 350 kilometers. It is capable of carrying 500 kilograms to 1,000 kilograms of warheads, and its thrust is generated by liquid propulsion twin engines. It can hit mobile targets, including unmanned aerial vehicles. The missile was inducted into the Indian Armed Forces in 2003 and is the first missile to be developed by the DRDO under the Integrated Guided Missile Development Program. The Niti Aayog has predicted that the growth rate will be up to 8% by the end of the current government's term in 2019. Niti Aayog Vice Chairman Arvind Panagaria also said that India's economy is expected to grow at 7.5% in the fiscal ending in March 2018.
I expect growth to be around 7.5% in the current year. Before this, the present term of the government ends, I would expect that we would have hit the 8% mark and probably entered another round, another trajectory of sustained growth at 8% plus by the time the government completes its term. One for the Indian Medical Council, one for homeopathy.
Panagaria also said that the economy would witness a good turnaround as early as the first quarter of 2018-19. He also reimposed faith in the country's economy after the GDP growth slowed down to 7.1% year-on-year in 2016-17. The GDP growth in January-March quarter came down to 6.1%, with which India lost the tag of the fastest-growing economy. The slowdown has been attributed to demonetization, although the government denies this. The Niti Aayog Deputy Chairman also described the Goods and Services Tax, or GST, and insolvency and bankruptcy as some of the biggest reforms the Modi government has taken.
In terms of the reforms, I would rank obviously the GST is clearly the most important reform that has happened. But what has been done is the spectrum is extremely wide. Actually, you can take almost any sector. This is very much along the lines that the first NDA government under Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee had done. I mean, if you look back, which I certainly have done, almost every area was addressed.
Fresh allegations were levelled against Delhi Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal today by sacked Minister and party leader Kapil Mishra. Mishra claimed that Kejriwal and Satyendra Jain were involved in the CNG car kit scam in the capital during the odd-even car ration scheme, where faulty CNG kits were procured and installed in 10,000 cars.
In fresh allegations against Arvind Kejriwal government, sacked Delhi Minister Kapil Mishra has accused it of installing faulty CNG kits in close to 10,000 cars in the national capital, risking thousands of lives. Mishra alleges that the Delhi government purchased faulty kits from China but claimed that they were manufactured by a Canadian company. Mishra also blamed Kejriwal and Satyendra Jain of awarding the CNG kit installation contract to a company banned by the courts.
दिल्ली की सरकार को ये डिटेल दिए जाते हैं कि किट कनाडा से आ रही है. हमारे पास मैन्युफैक्चरर है कनाडा में, वहाँ पर मैन्युफैक्चर होके इंडिया में आ रही है. हमने इंपोर्ट डेटा कनाडा का निकलवाया है जो हम लोग शेयर करेंगे. कनाडा से कोई किट नहीं आती है. उसके बाद हम लोगों ने जब डिटेल निकालने शुरू करे तो पता लगा कि ये नकली किट चाइना में बनती हैं.
The allegations have once again been rejected by the Aam Aadmi Party.
तो कोई FIR नहीं लिख रहा है. नहीं, मैं तो FIR लिखवाएं. सारी एजेंसियां तो इंतजार कर रही हैं गुलदस्ता लेकर.
Last month, Kapil Mishra had claimed Arvind Kejriwal and Satyendra Jain's involvement in 3 health scams, including one in the procurement of medicines. On Thursday, the anti-corruption branch began investigating the medicine scam. Anu Diwan's report for Rajya Sabha TV.
And here's a look at the other developments from across the country and nationwide. The farmers' strike in Maharashtra entered the second day on Friday, with farmers from Pune, Ahmednagar and Nasik joining the agitation. Reports claim that many protesters were blocking trucks carrying milk and vegetables, while in some places traders were selling agricultural products at higher rates. People in Mumbai and other areas are now facing problems due to the shortage of dairy and farm produce. Maharashtra Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis has set up a committee to resolve the issues. Meanwhile, social activist Anna Hazare has extended his support and expressed the desire to mediate between the government and the agitators. The Enforcement Directorate registered a money laundering case to probe alleged irregularities in the 2016 Bihar topper scam case. The probe agency has filed a criminal case against 8 people, including the former State School Examination Board chairman and 4 principals. The scam had rocked Bihar last year after Ruby Rai, who had topped in the arts category, failed to answer basic questions. The Delhi High Court has issued notices to all the 3 MCD commissioners of lack of cleanliness in the city. The court further noted that there has been a violation of court orders to collect and dispose garbage. This comes after a petition filed in the court seeking directions to the concerned authorities to take steps to prevent diseases like dengue and chikungunya from occurring in Delhi. The CBI on Friday registered 2 charge sheets in separate cases related to the Madhya Pradesh Vyapam scam. In both the cases, the accused persons were booked on charges of cheating and forgery under IPC. It was alleged in the FIR that some candidates had submitted multiple applications, were allotted 2 roll numbers with 1 examination center. The agency is probing the case on the order of the Supreme Court. Former Intelligence Bureau Chief Dineshwar Sharma has taken charge as a mediator for peace talks with Assam's insurgent groups. He has been appointed for a duration of 1 year. Sharma will hold peace negotiations with several insurgent organizations like the ULFA, NDFB and few other small groups based in the state. A quick break here. Up next, international news.
The problem that exists today in society is malnutrition. They are the powerhouse of nutrition. You don't find in any other grain such a nutrition available. All the millets put together, their nature of high rich fiber. These crops are good for planet, good for the farmer and good for you.
Watch Eureka with Dr. Vilas A. Tonapi, Director of Indian Institute of Millets Research, Hyderabad, only on Rajya Sabha television. Welcome back. International news. And there was widespread international condemnation of President Trump's announcement of the U.S. withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement on Friday. UN Chief Antonio Guterres called it a major disappointment, while the European Union called it a sad day for the world. Trump said that the accord punished the US and will cost millions of American jobs.
Donald Trump on Thursday confirmed that the U.S. will quit the Paris Climate Agreement. The U.S. president described the accord as a deal disadvantageous to the U.S. and one that harmed American jobs.
In order to fulfill my solemn duty to protect America and its citizens, the United States will withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, but begin negotiations to re-enter either the Paris Accord or in really entirely new transaction on terms that are fair to the United States, its businesses, its workers, its people, its taxpayers. So we're getting out, but we will start to negotiate, and we will see if we can make a deal that's fair.
The international community condemned the much-expected decision of Trump. The United Nations said it was a major disappointment. It felt the move of the world's second-largest greenhouse gas emitter could lead to rise in global temperature.
Climate change is undeniable, and it is one of the biggest threats to our present world, to the future of our planet. And on the other hand, climate action is unstoppable. And I urge all the governments around the world to stay the course, to remain committed to the implementation of the Paris Agreement to the benefit of all of us.
Leaders the world over also expressed disappointment over the US's decision, saying it will be an abdication of US leadership on a key global challenge. The decision also drew condemnation from people across the US.
Today, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, announced his decision to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement. I do respect this decision, but I do think it is an actual mistake, both for the US and for our planet.
His announcement today, from our point of view, is disappointing, but not at all surprising. It was entirely as expected and as predicted and as promised by him.
It's a little frightening, it's scary. I have really young family members, nephews. I plan on having kids myself, and the repercussions of this for the future generations is really frightening.
But despite a big blow to the Paris climate deal, many countries have pledged their commitment to the fight against global warming. Greenpeace organization said there was still hope in the fight against climate change.
It's going to be more difficult without the U.S. However, if you look at that, the rest of the world is responsible for 85% of the global emissions, and you see that other countries are willing to remain committed to the Paris Agreement, and in fact are stepping up their climate ambitions. I think that's a very hopeful message.
Our government is committed, irrespective of the stand of anyone, anywhere in the world. It has been the stand of Mr. Narendra Modi ji. He provided leadership at the Paris summit, and we are committed to ensure that we will do our best to address the issues related to climate change.
政府高度重视气候变化问题，坚决贯彻创新、协调、绿色、开放、共享的发展理念，采取切实的政策行动，积极应对气候变化，取得了有目共睹的成效。
Canada is deeply disappointed with the U.S. position. The Paris Agreement is a good deal for Canada, and it's a good deal for the world. It will create good jobs. The clean growth economy is where the world is going, and Canada is going to be part of it.
There will be no penalty on the US for leaving, as the Paris deal is based upon the premise of voluntary emissions reductions by participating countries. However, stepping out of its provisions will be a lengthy process that could take up to 4 years. While Trump said he was ready to renegotiate the deal, the European leaders said the US could not unilaterally do so.
The Paris Agreement is fit for purpose. The Paris Agreement is here to stay. And the 29 articles of the Paris Agreement, of this Paris Agreement, are not to be renegotiated. They are to be implemented. And that's what the European Union will do.
The Paris Agreement of 2015 commits the US and 194 other countries to keeping rise in global temperatures well below 2 degrees Celsius. Only Syria and Nicaragua have not signed the deal. The US contributes about 15% of global emissions of carbon, but it is also a significant source of finance and technology for developing countries in their efforts to fight rising temperatures. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV.
And now to Kabul, where over 1,000 protesters took to the streets attempting to march to the presidential palace. Apart from tear gas and water cannons, police also resorted to live fire to scare off the protesters. They were demanding the government's resignation following the catastrophic suicide bombing on Wednesday that killed 90 people and wounded hundreds. Here are the details. Helpless and angry, more than 1,000 demonstrators from Kabul and nearby areas clogged the streets of the Afghan capital on Friday, demanding President Ashraf Ghani and senior security officials to step down. Police in riot gear used water cannon and tear gas to block the protesters, occasionally firing automatic weapons into the air. At least 3 protesters were wounded and were rushed to Kabul's emergency hospital. Many among the protesters were families of victims of Wednesday's brazen attack, which was launched from an explosives-laden sewage tanker that tore a massive crater in the ground. The bombing during the holy month of Ramzan highlighted the ability of militants to strike even in the capital's most secure district, home to the presidential palace and foreign embassies. The earthquake-like explosion was the deadliest in the city since 2001. But residents claim that terror reigns the land and they are tired of living that way.
از سران حکومت میخوایم اگر میتونن امنیت بگیرن باشن، اگر نمیتونن استعفا بدن، یک آدم صحیح که واقعا به وطن خدمت میکنه همو باشه. چرا؟ به خاطر چی؟ تا به کی ما قدر زجر بکشیم؟ همیال هزاران خانواده ما شما ده هزار شیشته.
There has been no claim of responsibility for Wednesday's blast, but Afghanistan has blamed the Haqqani network and said that it had been helped by Pakistan's intelligence service. But Islamabad has rejected the allegations.
We actually reject the Afghan allegations, baseless allegations. The approach, the accusatory approach, is unhelpful towards efforts for peace. Pakistan has suffered from the menace of terrorism, and I think we have made unparalleled sacrifices in the war against terrorism. Pakistan has highest stakes in the peace and stability in Afghanistan.
While relatively modest in size, the demonstration in Kabul nonetheless underlines the growing public anger with the government for its failure to ensure public security almost 3 years after most foreign troops left Afghanistan. Bureau Report, Rajya Sabha TV. And here are more updates from across the world in Global Buzz. Widespread flooding and mudslides in Sri Lanka affected over 6 lakh people across the country. Victims are now forced to live in shelters offered by the government. Besides offering food and shelter, the government is also providing psychological counseling to those who tragically suffered the loss of their loved ones. Over 200 people were killed in the flooding in the country. At least 36 people were killed after an attack by a gunman who fired shots from an assault rifle and set fire to gambling tables in a popular hotel casino in Philippines' capital, Manila. The attack took place in the early hours of Friday morning. Most of the victims died from inhaling smoke. Of those killed, 22 were resort guests and 13 were staff members. 54 people were injured. The gunman later killed himself in one of the hotel rooms. US President Donald Trump's administration has asked the country's Supreme Court to reinstate its controversial travel ban on people from majority Muslim countries. In its filing, the administration asked the top court to overturn rulings of the lower courts in Hawaii and Maryland. It also asked the court to grant emergency requests that would see the travel ban reinstated immediately. The ban has already been blocked by lower courts that have called it discriminatory. And finally, in sports, in the French Open, Liana Pace bowed out of the men's doubles event after losing his second-round match. In fact, Pace and his American partner, Scott Lipsky, lost in straight sets 6-7, 2-6 against the Spanish duo of Tommy Robredo and David Marrero. On Thursday, the Indian men's doubles pair of Purav Rajya and Dvij Sharan advanced to the second round in straight sets victory. In the men's singles, fifth-seeded Milos Raonic advanced to the fourth round after his opponent retired in the second set. The Canadian was leading 1-0 when Spain's Guillermo Garcia Lopez retired due to injury. 10-seeded David Goffin also progressed to the next round after Horacio Zeballos of Argentina retired in the first set. In the women's singles, 4th-seeded Gabin Muguruza reached the fourth round with a straight sets victory over Yulia Putintseva of Kazakhstan. That's it on the news at 6. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a good evening.